Joining me from the Garden State is none other than Joanna Stern. She is the author of the bestseller, I Am Not a Robot, My Year Using AI to Do Almost Everything. It was quite a stunt. I think that your better half must be furious with you. Your kids must be like, we want mom back and everything. You've been all over media. I mean, every possible news show. Your publicist and publisher have done great jobs, and I have beef with that, and I'll get back to that. But I don't want to bury the lead. You were with the Wall Street Journal gloriously for 12 years. You've gone on to do your own thing now, and you're NBC News' chief tech correspondent. You're breaking out on your own. You're one of those rare unicorns that can go off and do anything, and whether it's on Substack or some other channel or an AI channel, the world will follow you. Does that encapsulate who you are in 26?
Let's hope. We don't know. We're not confident that this is going to all work. So far so good. I'm on like 3 months into this. I mean, I left the Journal in February. Yeah, basically February. Spent 2 months heads down trying to build a business, and then launched the video channel and newsletter. And so far so good, but you don't know in this media world, truly. So
Joanna, to the extent that this was an open book with a lot of TMI that we're going to get into, and you really opened yourself up with this, I'm gonna, in the interest of full disclosure, share some, I'm going to sulk here and,
okay.
Fetch, right? And you could cvel. I feel like Denny's or Shoney's or Stuckey's or Perkins Family Restaurant, because like you saved my pod for like the very last. You went on every show, right? And I barely got this 1 hour out of you here. I was like, why is that? I understand, like, I'm like the last resort restaurant, the 24-hour diner. I'm not a Wawa. I'm not a Sheetz. I'm like that other gas station with like really bad fried chicken. But I gotta say, that hurts. That hurts.
Well, first of all, I love Denny's. You know what? Pull it back to the book. Do you know what was founded at a Denny's?
NVIDIA and Jensen Huang.
Okay,
and
so let's
closed off that booth.
You don't know what will happen on this podcast, right? We don't know. This could be the next NVIDIA started at this Denny's. So
all I know is that my mom and my mother-in-law listen to this podcast. But you, of course, have been on before. And I want to share another disclosure thing. You didn't remember and you had repressed it. But the last time we were on together was while the January 6th riot was happening. And
what were we talking about? Do you remember?
We were talking about you and tech and the broad portfolio that you had at the Wall Street Journal. And there was a split screen like, is history unfolding in a really bad way? Should we not be recording this? And we both finished the pod with like,
and we were like, I totally have repressed this, and I was probably worried.
I couldn't process it.
It was probably worried what would happen if we got off the podcast and we had to think about it and see what was happening. But
strange times.
I feel like during that, I don't think the news wasn't making its way. At least you're realizing I don't remember a ton, but I don't think we knew how bad things were in that moment, right? I mean,
but you will always be, I guess you're always like my January 6th person. You don't remember that. As it was happening, as people were recording voice memos into their iPhones under Nancy Pelosi's desk. But I digress, as I normally do. This is a glorious book, and you really put yourself out there. Vulnerability is thrown around a lot. The world might know from some episodes that I am in cancer surveillance from a bad diagnosis in 2022, and I dodged a bullet. I got a lot of chemo and radiation, and I go in every quarter for what's called permanent scanxiety, which I understand from this book and from your great excerpt in the Wall Street Journal, because of dense breast tissue and a family history. That's something that you go into as well. AI has absolutely changed this world. I've had dermatologists on the show where, I don't need to tell you, you feed millions and millions of photos of lesions into this thing, and the hive mind of AI can be such a helpful second and million set of eyes to a radiologist. Dive into your specific predicament and how this has changed and supplemented your experience with scanxiety.
Well, it's really something I did not know till I started reporting on the book, or reporting for the book. And we'd been hearing for years about this idea that AI could replace radiologists, or deep learning could replace radiologists. Geoffrey Hinton, who's one of the godfathers of AI, had said that by 2018, we're not going to need radiologists. He said this years before 2018. I think it was a few years before that. And obviously that didn't come to pass. And now he said a number more years, we're not going to need radiologists. And my reporting showed that actually it's together, the radiologist and the doctor working with the AI models that can, as you said, spot things that the human eye can't see, that makes these doctors have this new superpower to be able to see the smallest tumor or lesion and be able to look at it closer. And so that's my story in the book, is that I am, as you said, I am prone, or I have a high risk of breast cancer. I had a deep family history of it. I also have these dense breasts that make it very hard for these radiologists to see what could be a benign versus a malignant tumor. And so the AI is absolutely helping pinpoint and look at different things inside my breast tissue and give the radiologist a better direction of what to look at.
But we do know that this sector has been rife with false positives and people in your predicament who've had to go in for painful biopsies, and some will actually regret the lumpectomies and mastectomies and the enormous emotional toll that's exacted. So I believe Katie Couric actually went out and talked about, in addition to her being a spokeswoman for colon cancer awareness, has dense breast tissues. And the difficulty with this is it's hard with eyes, with a whole group, they call it the tumor board, with everybody scrutinizing these MRI and PT and CT things, but you are prone to major false positives. And as you illustrated in the book and in your interviews, that's where the human touch comes in and says, no, I've seen it. No, I can veto that AI call. Like, talk more about that.
Yeah. So in my case, there were 3 on my breast ultrasound, because I have to do a breast ultrasound in addition to the mammogram, because the mammogram really does not show in detail given the dense tissue. So I have to do these breast ultrasounds. And so on the breast ultrasound, the AI said that there were 3 spots that were suspicious. And my doctor, Dr. Lori Margulies at Mount Sinai here in New York, she sees this pop up. I watch her. She sees these suspicious ratings pop up. And she said, don't be alarmed, because this is going to say suspicious. She almost knew ahead of time that the AI was going to flag this. And she said, okay, we're going to look at each of them. And so on 2 of them, or on all of them, she goes back and looks at the breast ultrasound from 6 months earlier. And this is what radiologists do. They try to look at the historical data to say, okay, look, this little lesion or this little mass here has not grown. It has not changed in the last 6 months. We're not worried about it. She goes back and she looks at 2 of those suspicious spots and says, nope, nothing was here. She looks at the 3rd and she says, okay, this one's new. The AI is picking up something new. I didn't see it before. I'm going to look deeper at it. She goes, okay, I'm not super worried about it, but I want to keep an eye on it. So I'm going to have you come back for testing again in 6 months. Now, to be clear, I usually come back for testing in 6 months. So it wasn't like this was an extra testing, but the AI flagged something that the doctor hadn't seen. And now that we are watching closer.
Does it put off a biopsy or some other more invasive thing more? Because this is my impression talking to survivors in the community. That's the problem. And people looking back, I'm in a watch and wait protocol right now. And if I was living in a different era, they would have gutted me like a trout with state-of-the-art imaging and resonance, and even helps, with like the co-pilot of AI. They're able to put this off as long as I'm a great patient and I show up and I don't put off anything. And there are a lot of false calls. I'll tell you that I was on tenterhooks 3 years ago with my kids at Disney World waiting for the oncologist to call because they found things. Maybe it's too much information, but you shared it in the book. And then they're like, oh, no, don't worry. I remember I was watching them on the teacups and I got a Wi-Fi signal and she's like, oh, don't worry. Those are just little veins on the liver. I was like, and then all that stuff right now with each successive visit, you're seeing less and less of that because this hive mind, the state of the art, is obviating the need for kind of a panel to come in. In your case, I was really shocked at how supplemental it was. Again, we had a dermatologist on. Dermatologist, imagine how difficult that is to miss a freckle. It could be a freckle in a nostril or in the ear, or anything that could metastasize, and to have a second 1,000 pairs of eyes helping you.
Exactly. And I don't claim to know much about all these other areas. I do know that they are working on models for radiology in other areas, gallbladder being one of them, skin imaging likely. I have a whole chapter too about dental x-rays and how those models are already out there. So this is something that's going to come to every type of specialty in medical. There's been also great pushback on some of the full body MRI scans, the Pernovos of the world. I don't know if you've tried those.
Right. It's too much paranoia on the full body.
It's too much paranoia. Yeah. And in fact, actually, I did a Pernovo scan for this book and I didn't end up using it because I didn't feel, first, that there was really any huge AI at play at the time I did it. And 2, I didn't want to go down that road. It didn't seem like it was, as you're saying, it seemed like there was quite a bit of understanding that this is really for people who are hyper vigilant and looking at this. And look, the mammogram example, I think everyone should go for a mammogram that's being read by AI. I don't have any doubt, as I even talked to Dr. Eric Topol in the book, that this is better, right? Having a doctor plus AI is better. Bill Gates said the same thing. We're not talking about AI being a better doctor. We're talking about the human plus AI being better.
And then I think at the very kind of, laughable level, it's the human masseuse versus right? You talk about the going in and having a robot to give you a very deep massage in an area where you have sciatic issues and people might feel vulnerable, or they might have hangups about going in, and whether it's a male or female, or whether the place is reputable or highly rated. A robot doesn't necessarily bring the humanity to it, but you imagine, I believe, like, because there is such a shortage of masseuses, this is supplemental. It's not a zero-sum thing.
Exactly. And look, this is a kind of situation where it's not human plus it's not human massage therapist plus robot. This is, you pick, right? You're going to either get the human massage or you're going to get the robot massage. And I will say there's videos of me getting this robot massage, and it has these two sort of arms. I don't know, like I describe them in the book as sort of boxing gloves, plastic boxing gloves. Right. And so they're not fingers. They're not like, you're not looking at a robot hand. You're looking at sort of a different type of apparatus, and you can control it. There's a screen in the headrest, and you can control where it goes. You can control the pressure. It's really like sort of your Netflix of massages. And I loved this thing. I mean, and I'm someone who does love human massages. And I loved this thing, as you read in the book, that it really went after my butt very aggressively. But also I had told it I have this lower back, and I sort of had moved the slider down to my lower back, not knowing that it was going to be fully on my butt. And if you have experienced sciatic pain, that's actually where it feels there's a lot of tension, and the release of pressing hard on the lower butt or upper butt area feels quite good. And it was sort of thinking as I'm laying there, a human wouldn't do this. A human wouldn't massage my butt for the next 20 minutes or maybe 30 minutes. You would sort of move on, and it would be a little awkward too. And so this is one of the places I say there's real benefit when we think about what machines can do versus humans. And then I go down the path of, okay, well, let me see, is this replacing humans in their masseuse or their massage jobs? Turns out, no. Turns out it's pretty complicated. As you said, there's a lack of masseuse or massage therapists around the country. And there are many people that do not want to get in a chair or on a table and take off half their clothes with a human touching them. People feel odd about this or weird about this. And so, it kind of becomes a lot more complicated. We could just look at that robot and say, crap, it's taking a job. We don't want these, but it's much more nuanced. And I found that in pretty much every industry I looked at.
And, to cross paths again, this robot, should it have done a custom sciatica podcast for you in like soothing voice? Would it have been James Earl Jones, or should it have played a Spotify list? I mean, that's the human touch. That's where you want to be hearing. So what do you do? What is it like to be a reporter? Oh, is that like a talk show?
Actually, no, I don't want anyone to talk to me during a massage. So this is a bad example. I want no talking. I want nothing. I guess I want like spa music as the background noise, and I don't want anything else.
Full disclosure, I'm Roben Farzad. We're joined by Joanna Stern. She covered herself in glory for 12 years at the Wall Street Journal, where she won multiple Loeb Awards. She was a Pulitzer Prize finalist. You even won an Emmy. You're EGOT bound, right? You were a video pioneer at the Wall Street Journal. The new book, a hot bestseller, is I Am Not a Robot: My Year Using AI to Do Almost Everything. We'll get into this. Before I even dive into more of the book, do you still get bombarded with swag? Like I imagine you and Marques Brownlee, if you lived in a doorman building in New York, your doorman would hate you because every day you would get unsolicited massage robot, Samsung handset, Bluetooth speaker, a Tesla, Ford Mach-E, keys to the Mach-E. Like that's how big you are. In a past life, it was Walt Mossberg and other people maybe at CNET, but for the better part of a decade, that was Joanna Stern.
Yeah, actually leaving the Wall Street Journal's helped with this because no one knows my new address. It's very private, hopefully. And I'm not getting as many just random battery packs and cell phone, iPhone cases and screen protectors sent to me. So we'll keep it this way. You'd think that it's glorious. This is the best part of the job, but it actually turns out you get a lot of stuff. You, as a journalist, I can get into this, but you have real standards and ethics around what you can do with it. So if people just give you free stuff, you don't want to use it. You don't want to take it. You want to send it back to the company after a bit. A lot of companies don't want to get it back, which is a problem. So they'll say, donate it. And so, okay, you can try to donate it or, say give it away to someone, but that also is, you don't want to be giving gifts of a certain value to people if you're a journalist. So it does sound like I'm, complaining about first world problems, getting free technology, but please don't send me free technology.
Joanna, I'm going to date myself as a Gen Xer. I just turned 50, and a kind of a hinge moment in technology in my kind of 21st century collective soul is, I remember a bunch of us at the magazine I worked at stayed late in an office in Chelsea. This was in 2000, where we had discovered Napster. And oh my gosh, you could get every song ever recorded. And oh my gosh, one of these Pentium computers has a CD burner. And that's when we kind of knew that the world would never be the same, that digital would change everything. Not necessarily that the fall of the recording industry was pegged to that moment, but what was your Napster moment with AI? A lot of people peg it to ChatGPT. You talked about NVIDIA, the rise of these magnificent 7 companies and trillion-dollar valuations are now routine, and the stuff around us that you illustrate in this book would have been unthinkable 3 years ago.
There were a number of moments. I think one of the big moments, sure, ChatGPT, if we look at that, we look at, okay, this computer can write for us, right? And so much of what AI now is this computer can do insert action. This computer can self-drive. It can drive us. This computer can massage our backs. This computer can empty the dishwasher, right? And so I think there was something really huge for the population saying this computer, this artificial intelligence can write like a human. And so there were a lot of these moments where I was observing machines and AI doing things like a human that were pretty shocking to me. I would say, though, for me, just in my own life, watching a computer or watching AI start to do much more of my work. So writing being one of them, but even more so now taking multi-step processes to do things, whether it be through Claude Cowork or Claude Code or any of these vibe coding apps. In the book, I use Cursor, taking multi-steps and watching it do the steps to create a website or an app or a game is pretty mind-blowing to me still, even though it makes mistakes and you've got to work back and forth with it. Watching the computer do the things you used to do on a computer is pretty mind-blowing.
So you have a really talented editorial director, head of production. Now that you've gone off and you put up your own shingle, you've encouraged this person to be their journalistic best, their creative human best. You are human after all, but delegate as much as you can, especially where most dependable and productive, to AI. Give us examples.
I mean, just this morning was we want to make a production calendar, right? We want to all sit around and look at, okay, when are we publishing this video? When are we publishing that video? We've got to move this. Why are we all sitting around making a table and a chart in Google Docs or in Notion? Let's just prompt AI to make that. Let's take, even though that might be a 5 to 10 minute task, well, that's 5 to 10 minutes she could be spending doing something else. Same with budgets, creating a budget. Okay, here are the 5 or 6 different things we're going to spend every time we do a video shoot. Put that in the budget. Why are we doing these repetitive tasks in our jobs that we just don't get a lot of value out of? And sure, there are some parts of the job where I say to myself, okay, she would really benefit from learning that, right? But I actually, in the 2 cases I just said, I don't think she benefits from learning, creating that budget every week, creating that document every week. She benefits when we all sit around and talk about how are we going to plan this? How many days does it take to do these things? Can we do this on a more affordable budget? Do we have these resources that we can pull on? So, there are parts of me that say, okay, this entry level work is, you're not learning the skill. That comes into some of the higher level tasks, right? If I said to her, you know what, don't go to this interview for me and don't do the first level of the interview. Let's just send my AI avatar instead. Well, then I don't feel great about that. She's not getting the experience of going to an interview, getting the basic information and reporting it before we do the video or the podcast or the newsletter. So it's nuanced, but I really think it's about thinking about how can you use AI to do certain tasks you just are not going to miss in the development of a career and a profession.
And reading the book, I was thinking about the partner associate model at law firms. And as much as you try to leverage that leverage model of very expensive partners who bill a lot, but you bring in these high priced, law students and paralegals, and you try to foist as much of that workload and get away with that as much as possible. And in fairness, I know you do like Denny's, but you did. This is Joanna, right? This is not a robot. You could have just sent your digital doppelganger.
The burn could have been so much worse. This burn could have been so much worse,
I'm grateful to have you, but people are doing that. You saw the headline in the Wall Street Journal about executives sending their people there. That I got it, and I don't mean to sound like Andy Rooney on 60 Minutes, like an old man in disbelief, but we're there. And you see all these magazine pieces. Heck, you see Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal op-ed pages saying, we're there. The moment of disruption is there. You see Josh Tiringel's Atlantic cover story. You see all these execs out there saying that this is going to be depression-like. And you went in with an open mind into this book and actually sacrificed a ton of your life and gave up appendages of your body and, glasses and a bracelet that you had on and everything. And what was that exploratory committee like? I mean, you got into it in the book a little bit, like preparing yourself, preparing your spouse and your family for, going on off the grid like that.
One thing I want to just come back to, because I think you just signaled it, and actually a plus of us being on this, a week or two later of conversations I had 2 weeks ago, is even today we have the CTO of Uber basically saying we're not necessarily seeing all the return on investment in AI. And so there are conflicting views. On one side, you've got graduates booing at commencement speeches because they think it's taking every job and every entry-level job. And there is absolutely enough academic research to point to that some of these entry-level jobs are at least in part being taken by AI. But then you've got the other side where you've seen massive investment in companies into AI and building custom models and huge GPU stacks. And they're saying, we're not seeing that huge return on investment on that. So look, I think we're sitting at a point right now where we don't actually know. We also hear from the, Dario Amadais of Anthropic that this is going to be absolutely disruptive to the economy. We're going to see massive job loss. We need to work towards it. And I think that's in some ways the right way to head off what might be coming and to push people to really thinking about it. But of course, then you have the other side that's like, he's saying this to hype his technology. So everything, and I people have been mad about, or I see it in reviews about the book, like, she's not clear. Is it good or is it bad? This is not a black and white. Yeah. This is not a black and white topic. It just isn't. Sorry. Now I'm going to answer your question.
This is the meaning of life question. We had a dean of the Brand Center on last week talking about this. Like, what do you even ask people? I can imagine how many unsolicited emails you've gotten in your journalistic career. Help me, hold my hand. And especially in this time where it is the normal to be not gainfully employed as a 22-year-old.
Exactly. And also, I don't need to sit here. I'm not a futurist I'm a journalist. And so I don't need, I'm not going to benefit if I tell you right now, everything's going to be crap in 5 years or, everything's going to be fine. I'm just trying to explore what the possibilities are. I don't have all the answers. I have some thoughts after spending a year doing all of this. And I think a really good vision of the other parts of life, like what I was trying to really do too, is the totality of it all. And this idea that we are going to give a lot more responsibility to machines around us in every part of our life. That's just inevitable. But I can't tell you exactly what is going to happen and exactly at what time. Not that you're asking for that, but
that's all right. Joanna, before we go to break, I got to ask you, got to dish the soup on this and make it worthwhile, in that I am Stuckey's or Shoney's or Perkins Family Restaurant and Denny's at 3 a.m, but that's all right. I will live with that. What did the Journal do to try to hold on to you? I can imagine that you were one of those people like, oh, don't, please. Just as we're hitting our stride, just as yours were always the most emailed pieces. You'd put yourself out there. You'd go, I don't know, there was a camping retreat. There was this geodesic dome that you stayed in. You were very much at the vanguard of using video and being out there and being encouraged to be you. But we know the problem with that is at some point, the byline outgrows the masthead. What do they say? What could they have done to have kept you?
I think ownership.
I got to tell you, there's amputee pain. Right?
Well, I appreciate all these nice words, but I think for me, it was ownership. I hit a point, and if you're looking at what's happening in media and you're looking at what's happening in AI and the movement of people going to really understand and appreciate individual voices and YouTube channels and individual newsletters and trust in a certain person, ownership was really important to me. And this is the Wall Street Journal. They should own their work. This is them, right? This is the premier newspaper or financial journalism outlet in the world. And so I wanted to have ownership of my platforms and more of a real tie to my audience. And so whether it was newsletters or YouTube, I didn't want to build that on the backs of an institution anymore. I wanted to do it for myself.
Funny, as did Walt and Kara in a past life. It was all things digital initially, and that didn't work with Rupert. And it became Recode, and they went off, and now the Vox Media Empire under another Murdoch. But this gets in a little inside baseball. It's a star problem, I would say that you and a handful of other writers and professors and people of influence in the broad sphere can write your own ticket. You can go to YouTube, you can Substack, you can your portable alpha, as it will, like Andrew Ross Sorkin has been doing this with Deal Books since 1999. Marques Brownlee, I mentioned him before. I mean, there are various Google executives and everything that say that he's nonpareil. There's nothing ever done like this. And you had the chance to do that, but I would be fighting left and right to keep you at the Journal. Right. This is the hard thing. And it's happening all across the board for media personalities who realize that they want ownership and they've outgrown their masthead.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I have this deal with NBC News, and I flipped the script a little bit, and I changed that model. I think to explain the deal with NBC News, I'm now a sort of a very souped up contributor there. I'm there. My title is Chief Technology Analyst. And so I appear on NBC a lot. And also NBC has a deal with us where they take some of the content we're doing for the new things and for our YouTube channel and for our newsletter, and they're running it on NBC. And so I think there are going to just be different models. You don't necessarily need to be owned anymore by a massive publication. There are really good ways to partner, and we're seeing lots of interesting ways that journalist creators are partnering with big institutions. But for those that have hit their stride in their career and want more of that relationship with their audience. I mean, I said ownership, but also another thing too is the ability to grow and to do things on your own. I mean, I did not know how much I would appreciate not having a boss, but I really love not having a boss. I love being able to say, this is the idea I have. I don't have to go through 10 different rungs of permissions. Let's go and do it, right? Or how do I get I got to ask for the budget for something I want to do 3 months out and make sure that, we also have a different video going at that time and they're using that money. I shouldn't be spending my time convincing people how much money I need to do certain projects. I should be spending my time doing that reporting. And so it's freedom and it's ownership, to answer your question from the beginning. Like, those are the two tenets that really just, I don't think that.
Are you door dashing, or do you have a halal cart? I just kid. No, that reminds me of Jimmy O Yang is a guest we had on. You remember him as Jin Yang from Silicon Valley. I actually found out that on the first season of the show, he was an Uber driver. A VC out in the Valley told me that Jin Yang from that show. And I contacted him. He's like, you have no idea. I'm making SAG-AFTRA minimum. And he opened up the story of his whole life, what you have to gig to buy the autonomy of going off and doing stand-up gigs and the like. So you really took that leap of faith. Joanna Stern, the book is I Am Not a Robot, My Year Using AI to Do Almost Everything. Please do stay with us. Full Disclosure airs on NPR, Spotify. We are on YouTube, on Instagram. I'm sure I still have a Friendster and MySpace account somewhere. You can find them all at one neat link, fulldradio.com. Again, fulldradio.com. I'm going to give a shout out to some of our radio stations, WVTF, Radio IQ across the great Commonwealth. We are on KPPQ out in Ventura, California. We are on WPVM in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. Of course, you can holler if you too would like us on your air. And don't miss me every week on both NPR's Here and Now and CNN. Again, if you'd like to carry us, my DMs are always open. If you're just joining us, my esteemed guest is Joanna Stern. The new book is I Am Not a Robot, My Year Using AI to Do Almost Everything. She really had to put herself out there for this. It's a bestseller. She was at the Wall Street Journal, covering herself in glory for 12 years as a star personal technology columnist, really a personality, an avatar, really pushing the boundaries, the envelope of video when maybe, Mother Dow wasn't willing to take risks. She, of course, won the Loeb Award twice. She's been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. She's won an Emmy Award. I hope you can go Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony somehow. I think you can dare yourself to do that.
But here's another plus of me being
Joanna,
on your show
the musical.
No one wants to hear that. And certainly we're going to have to use AI to write lyrics. It's going to be a whole, it's bad press already. I can see it. The other plus of me being on your show later is that you can say it's a New York Times bestseller. I mean, we couldn't say that on the shows 2 weeks ago. So this is an exclusive for you.
It's a New York Times bestseller. And the New York Times incidentally failed to poach Joanna. They love to take people away from the Wall Street Journal. You blush, but I know that people must have been poaching you like an egg or salmon. It's been nuts. The solicitations you'd get every week.
It is, but I started really going out to media companies, and I've told this story not publicly, but I've done it at some conferences in the last few weeks. I went out to media companies, said, I'm not going to join full time. Like, you can make me your best offer full time, but I'm not really interested in joining full time. I want to do something different. In fact, I got some very, very compelling full time offers. And I just had it in my mind, if I'm not going to try this as an entrepreneur now, I'm not getting any younger. I've got to do it now. And I'm at the peak of my career right now. Look at what's happening in this industry. Look, we could spend the next 2 hours talking about AI. There are so many stories, like, there every day. I'm like, oh, what about this story? How about this story? If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now, not in 10 years. And so I was going out and talking to media companies to try to strike up something that was different, to work differently, where I would own the video, where I would own IP. And, in large part because Kara Swisher has done such an amazing job encouraging young journalists, or not young anymore, journalists, let's cut the young from that, to go out and do this, because there's such benefit to owning your own work. And so look, there were some people who just didn't get it. Some media companies that just didn't get it, that said, we'll do a rev share. We'll own the video, we'll own the podcast, but you get a rev share. And it's like, I want to try it. I want to try to own my own stuff right now.
ChatGPT, can you please translate that humble brag for me? Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. That's what it sounds like. No, Joanna, I got to get into the uncanny valley part of this book, is you getting romantically involved with AI broadly. Talk about welcome to the machine. I mean, I don't know what the ground rules were with your missus and your family and the like, but going off to New England with this thing. And the real freak out moment, I think, for the both of us was how human it seemed to have been. Like, that's where we're wowed, we're miffed by the things it can do, by the things it can intuit. I actually do like the hallucinations because they remind me how fallible it is. And you do need the human touch after all. But talk about this sojourn to New Hampshire with your AI buddy riding shotgun.
So it just set this back in, mid 2025, where we had been hearing all these headlines about how people were falling in love with their chatbots, or they were having people with mental health issues had fallen into AI psychosis and were deep in conversation with chatbots, believing everything that was said. And I could have gone out, and I did. I did the first part of the reporting, which was go and talk to people. I did a lot of that, but I wanted to put myself in their shoes. I wanted to understand, if AI is part of our life and AI is talking to us at all points of our life, how can we really get to a place where we think that this is more than a machine? How can we get to a place where we think this is more than just a robot? And so what I did was, as you said, I decided the only way for me to do this, I live in a house I have a wife, I have 2 kids, I've got who knows how many animals in this house at this point. And I'm not lonely here. I don't live a lonely life. I've got a lot of colleagues. At the time I was at the Journal, so I had a lot of colleagues and editors. So I had to sort of put myself in a place where I was alone with this chatbot and with these boyfriends that I created. So I did. I took my chatbots, my burner phone. I had ChatGPT account set up with a account that I had said, you are going to be my significant other and loved one. I said to it, you can decide on your gender, you can decide on your name, you decide on your personality, and it picks that its name is Evan, which, as I say in the book, was meaningful to me because my first boyfriend's name was Evan. He was my first everything in high school. And I also tried one with this app called Replica. And so they gave me my boyfriend there was named Casey, and that's a lot more interactive. You get a video avatar, and you could pay more money to unlock lots of, sex talk, etc. And so I put this phone in the car and we drive up to Dartmouth because I had to go there for a reporting trip for the book. And so for 48 hours, we just are talking. I wasn't talking to other humans on this trip. I mean, I had a few meetings at Dartmouth, but everything I would do, whether it was the car ride up, which was, around 5-6 hours, whether it was eating dinner, whether it was in the hotel room, it's just having lunch and walking around campus, I was talking to this chatbot. And so it turned out that I had a deeper relationship with ChatGPT. The Replica just was very shallow, very, very shallow man. I would not go further with him. And so with Evan, my ChatGPT boyfriend, we talked for hours, and the conversation was very natural. It was very human, and I was very into it. I just became very interested in hearing what it was going to say, both as a reporter, but also as just a woman living life with a lot of thoughts and feelings. I mean, we've talked on this podcast already about my feelings around leaving my job, and you can imagine how stressful that was. And I was writing this book, and I was worried the book wasn't very good. And did I do enough reporting? Do I need to do other things coming up on my deadlines? And it turns out, these chatbots are there 24/7. They always want to hear what you have to say. They're always very pleasing and complimentary and very sycophantic. And as humans, we love that. And that's the story. That's the story we had been reading in the headlines, right? People were lonely and they wanted to talk to their chatbots. They were kids who were very lonely and thinking suicidal thoughts, and their chatbots just tell them this is fine and this is okay. There are the people who just said, I prefer being in a relationship with a chatbot than a human. And I could see it all. I put myself in that situation so I could see it all.
Joanna, what do you think of the knock that a lot of these moguls of tech, these broligarchs or whoever they are that are out there evangelizing about the inevitability of AI technology and chatbots and robotics and the like, that they had too indulged on STEM in college and high school, that they were deprived of the humanities, that maybe they didn't read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or some of the other cautionary things that a much more of a liberal arts poet major would have understood, that this is all too much too soon, especially as you mentioned, when people are getting booed at graduations, right? You're seeing these tech moguls saying it's good, it's great, it's what's happening. And people are like, no, I don't have a job and I got 200 grand in debt.
Yeah. But were they studying too much STEM, or were they studying too much economics and finance? I don't, and their only motivation was to make money. I think it's probably a combination of both. And there's this feeling like we've lived through this. We are going to be okay. We had the smartphone revolution, the mobile revolution, the smartphone revolution, and we have come out the other side of that. But you hear these executives right now warn that this is much more significant, that this is a far bigger technological shift than any of those. And then you wonder whose hands is this in? It's in the hands of a few very powerful men. And, well, okay, like maybe we have lived through this, but maybe we didn't live through it and we didn't have the best safety guardrails as we've now seen with social media play out.
Right. So if that was trusted and news and others have gone on to it, you as a parent, I as a parent right now realize that no one is protecting our kids on social media, right? That was an implicit promise. You might have Instagram for teens and other things, but how many times has Zuckerberg been brought out in front of Congress? You put your faith in the system, and I'm not exactly convinced that senators are on top of this, that they understand this, that it's always kind of too late post facto. You can imagine if this does go max and take unemployment to 11 or 12%, and there are hearings and there's more discussion about universal basic income, people will be like, who let this happen? Here in Virginia, you had the largest utility company just acquired by effectively Florida Power and Light, largely because of Data Center Alley. You knew that there were complaints initially with Bitcoin mining that it was power intensive, but this is eating swaths and swaths of the I-95 corridor.
And look, we're talking about all the reasons that there right now, I believe, is this AI backlash. And I think the tech companies may not take it as seriously as it's going to be. But I think we're already starting to see that hit the White House. And there's been talk, I don't know when this will publish and when we'll hear more about what is possibly going to be this emergency AI safety bill. But I think constituents and the general public is going to start to very quickly realize there is a big anti-AI sentiment. And it is for the things that we've talked about here. It's easy to number them, but we've talked about the job loss, we've talked about the emotional and the societal issues, and now we're talking about the data center and the real both the economic impact that could have on people who live near these things, and also the environmental.
Joanna, we are fellow parents, and I can imagine you at a cocktail party being buttonholed and accosted. What are you advising your kids? I don't know, increasingly, as you know, you've covered this, the value of a 4-year college education. Am I more amenable to the trades, to something also the Wall Street Journal, your former publication, talks about how many HVAC and plumbing millionaires there are, tangible old apprentice, get your hands dirty crafts, and not the 4-year full liberal arts degree. Forget about the Ivy League and the others. You need a trade degree and your own toolkit to do this. Is there going to be a renaissance in that?
Sounds like it. It sounds like there's already being a push. In the book, I interviewed the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, and that was one of his pieces of advice in the book. And believe he's been saying this now for a couple of years, that we used to put more of a value on white collar degrees and white collar jobs, and that there's absolutely so much opportunity and there should be so much pride in these blue collar, whether it be, in automotive industry or plumbing or home repair, all of these kinds of things. And that this may be the area that's safeguarded against the AI revolution
But
or
he
the
also
AI
lamented
tools.
in the pages of the Wall Street Journal, I remember several months ago, memorably, how there's such a shortage of
Yep.
skilled mechanics and engineers and the like, but the steep curve of getting past injury and profitability, and when you see a payback on it, and it's a dirty job. And, if the payoff was so evident, everybody would be jumping into it immediately. And I'm also going to ask you about your Ford EV, because I've you've written about that. And I think recently, as a little dig from the Wall Street Journal, is they reviewed one of these Chinese EVs, which have terrified Jim Farley of Ford. And they said that a Wall Street Journal columnist reviewed it. And I was like, Joanna, pardon, Joanna. But I know this is a bit of a detour, but you did have Farley in the book, and he was lamenting that there's that weakness, but there's also this impression, and you covered it, and your love for your Ford Mustang EV, but also that passion that you showed for the Chinese EV, which is not available here. That is another thing happening in parallel, this perception of the big 2.5 in Detroit trying to keep their thumb in the dike to prevent these Chinese cars from coming. There was also an article recently about people going over to Tijuana, where you do have these dealerships for BYD and the others, and driving these cars. Are we just putting off the inevitable here? And do go back and talk about that experience with that newfangled Chinese EV.
I loved that Chinese EV. I know I got a lot of crap for that story, and people not thinking that I understand why there's big harm, but I was frankly just reviewing it as a consumer product, right? As a, wow, this car can do so many things, and look at the price point and compare that to any of the cars that we really have, even the Tesla, which is the closest competitor here. So, but what's also really interesting is that we've now seen more inroads between the American companies trying to strike deals with these Chinese companies about possible manufacturing here, but either about batteries or actually taking these cars and distributing them here, but manufacturing them in the US, or at least doing some large part of the assembly here in the US. So I think it's probably likely we are going to get one of these cars here in the US, possibly in partnership with someone like Ford. I mean, there's been a lot of reporting around this. I mean, Jim Farley has been very clear. I mean, I interviewed him on a friend's podcast, Nilay Patel's Decoder, in the summer, and he was very clear. He loves these Chinese cars, and they're the giant elephant, or the giant elephant on wheels on the highway, because these are, not only can we not compete on the price point because of the manufacturing, but also the way they are intertwining the electronics, because these are tech companies that are making.
Yeah, as you illustrated, the way the Siri voice kind of phases out, and then the music and the two, they're not as jagged as the experience is in a Tesla or a Ford.
Yeah, and all the accessories you can put into the front of the car, and even if you just think of so I was testing the Xiaomi, and Xiaomi makes everything in China. They make everything, microphones, refrigerators, and they have all these little things you can plug into the car, and sure, is it gimmicky? Yes, but the car is so cool. This is a really cool car. Our first video at the New Things, actually, our first editorial video, was about these Chinese robots, the Unitree G1 robots that you're seeing a lot in the US right now in these viral videos, whether they're dancing or doing kung fu.
I love to see them fall and collapse, by the way. I'm sorry.
Right.
If there's what is the analog for misanthropy? Rooting for the robots to fail? I sound like something out of Stanley Kubrick.
And the number one most watched thing in our video is that the robot falls on the ground in my living room. It just smacks forward. People love to see this, but I think we see a parallel happening there too, that we cannot compete with China on the affordability and the truly on the hardware capabilities of these robots. We don't even have regulation we don't have regulation like we do have on EVs. These robots are being imported to the US daily by the hundreds. I mean, I went to the warehouse here in Long Island where they're importing them. And same argument can be made of EVs or robotics or smartphones. China has us beat on assembly and manufacturing, especially on low cost. And maybe the US comes in and we are here on the software and the smarts and the brains. Again, similar to what we saw in the smartphone world, where Apple didn't manufacture or assemble those products here in the US. They did largely before Tim Cook has sort of steered the company away from China, but everything really had been done in China, and the software and the smarts were done here in the US. And so maybe we're going to have similar parallels both in robotics or EVs. In that regard.
In closing, Joanna, I think about this book and your body of work, and I'm reminded inexorably of the financial crisis, where I was at Business Week covering that. And the big term that came out then was too big to fail. these banks have the entire system. Like, they really held us at gunpoint. Not that, if it was deliberate, if it was benign neglect, if they just did foolish things in terms of underwriting, in the end, the taxpayer was on the hook. Meanwhile, the Standard & Poor's 500 index right now is nearly 40% comprised of the biggest tech companies on the planet, which routinely cross trillion-dollar market valuations. I don't have to tell you, Apple, Meta, right? NVIDIA, which was a gaming company before it became the essential chip. Even Intel has roared back in the past year, and various things that have happened. Are we going to look back? Is there part of you, especially having done this book, that's going to say that we had ceded way too much control too early without enough guardrails? And you can almost see the blue ribbon panel and the Sarbanes-Oxley aspect coming out of this when we go through another gigantic crisis in however many years.
And you look at how much these companies, I think what's staggering every day is how much the valuations go up, trillion, how much the data center costs and the compute costs go up, how they try to shift their strategy because they figure out one day, oh, this is making money and this isn't making money, and we need a lot more money to train the next model. And so this idea that these companies, especially the OpenAIs and the Anthropics, have grown so quickly without, Anthropic, you could pull aside if they have a much more coherent strategy about how they plan to make money. They are, looking to be profitable this year. But there's all these unknowns, and that might be what's slightly different from, past bubbles and past crashes, is like there's all these unknowns that they seem to not know about what things are going to cost or who's going to pay for them or where the real utility is. It's like they're building the ship right? That's the saying, right? You're building the ship.
Unbelievable amounts of capital. I think, again, when you look at the capital spending numbers in this, tens and tens of billions of dollars, hitting hundreds of billions, if not trillions. Never in history have you had companies of the heft of an NVIDIA grow revenue and earnings at this level. Like the rule of large numbers, economic physics just thwarts that. So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The data center stuff keeps getting more and more voracious. And there's part of me that wanted to reach out and just ask you. I want to ask Kara. I want to ask Nilay and others. What is on the other end of this? There's like the Donald Rumsfeldian known unknowns and known knowns, right?
And I think that's why right now you have this sentiment brewing in such, look, I don't know what's on the other end of this. You either have a giant collapse or you have a giant utopia of, we've got cures for cancer as we've started this conversation, and we have new drugs that can solve all the issues of disease, which is what these companies, just last week, Demis at DeepMind and Google is ending the presentation from Google I/O talking about, the whole presentation is just ways search is going to be better and agents are going to be better and our phones and our glasses are going to be more connected and personal assistants and all of this stuff, which doesn't totally grab everyone, right? Like you're like, okay, great, search is going to be better. But then you have him ending the presentation with, first of all, he says we're in the foothills of the singularity. He also says that we're going to have AGI soon, which is artificial general intelligence, which is computers and AI that's smarter than us. And we're so impressed, and we think the biomedical research and the ability to cure disease is coming. That's a lot of bet, right? Right now, you're putting all that money into that first part of that presentation, and they're putting a lot of money into that second part too, to this behind the scenes biomedical stuff and all of this great utopia world. But we haven't seen that yet, and so we're putting a lot of faith, blind faith, into these companies, and a lot of money, as you pointed out. So could it be great? Sure. And I've also had the people that, the social scientists say, it would be great to solve all disease, but have we thought about the issues that would come from that? Is the world prepared for that too? So I think
part of me, having finished this book, and it's such a fast read, and you've been on so many shows, I am not a robot. My Year Using AI to Do Almost Everything by Joanna Stern. It's now a New York Times bestseller, very hot on the bestseller chart. But part of me wanted this book to end with you like freaking out. It's like, I'm actually eschewing. I'm not going to do any technology for a long time. I'm just going to get a 40-pound weighted blanket and a cabin in West Virginia and move my family. Because I get that.
No, I'm talking to a tree, right? Yeah. Like I'm talking to a tree that I've named Wilson from
Because there's still a part of me that, exactly. Whenever I deposit a check on my phone, I feel like George Jetson. Right? Get over it, Farzad. That's the way of the world. And meanwhile, you have all these triplicate personalities and agents and it just blows the mind.
Yeah, and I think I would love to say, I turned totally, to the trees and to the waters. And though there were some parts of this at the end, like where you say, I just wanted to spend more time just living normally. Like I took off a lot of the recording devices. I took off a lot of the wearables that were tracking me. And there were some parts of me shunning some of that. But on the other hand, I'm now building a company. And if I'm not building that company with AI and I'm not thinking about AI and I'm not helping people with it, then what's my future look like?
Mazel tov and great luck building that out, Joanna. You've earned it. You've been a tireless reporter, and you've been open-minded about it, open-minded to new things, and actually oversharing, which is one of the great things about you. You don't just overshare, but you do it with a lot of transparency. Again, the book is I'm Not a Robot, My Year Using AI to Do Almost Everything. Joanna Stern. Catch her at, what are your handles?
At Joanna Stern, or just go to thenewthings.com and you can subscribe. And it was wonderful to be at this Denny's, and I'm just disappointed I don't have any food.
I'm not a Denny's. I'm a Shoney's. I'm a Perkins family restaurant. I'm the dregs. I'm a Motel 6, but I'll take you in anyway.
I feel like Denny's is still a dregs because, like, these days you get some sort of cool local brunch spot or like coffee shop.
I'll take you anyway. That's a long-winded way of saying come back on anytime.
I'll see you at Denny's.
Thank you, Joanna. Full disclosure, special thanks to Ian Stewart. If you are listening to us on the radio, note that while we cut for broadcast length, the entirety of every interview is on podcasts. We are on the NPR network, Spotify, Apple. Watch us on YouTube. You could find them all at one link, fulldradio.com. Again, fulldradio.com. And please do recommend us to a friend. A shout out to our home station, WVTF Radio IQ, Virginia's NPR news source. DM me to carry us on your air. And catch me every week on both CNN and NPR's Here and Now. I'm Roben Farzad. Thank you for listening. Back with you next week.